The people are both the masters of both the Congress and the courts. Not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert it. Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. And where the government fears the people, you have liberty. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. My name's still Daniel Hapney, and this is The Real Story. And what I have for you tonight, some news. We're going to try to get a little format going for you, and we're going to go over a little bit of the news, so you know what's happening in the, in the world around you, because you may be too busy to catch the news, and or you may have been lied to during your news. And so you can bounce what I say off what you hear off the mass media, and find out which one makes more sense. And then what I was going to do is I was going to go over a great book that I had just completed, which was a book by Jim Marrs. And then we're going to finish this up with a little bit of JFK info, so you can get a better understanding of what John Fitzgerald Kennedy knew and why the media would portray some things about him and not tell you other things, things that he tried to tell us and tell the American people. So, what we have for you, first we'll go over some news. It's the week after the election thing. We have a president-elect thing. To date the show, we're going to say this is November. We're about the 10th or the 12th, somewhere before the 15th. And so, what do we know? Well, we know that our new everything's going to be wonderful president-elect has already chosen someone to be a White House chief of staff, I guess. And the person he chose was this guy by the name of Rahm Emanuel, if I get him right. And to me, it sounds a little Egyptian, but, the Ram thing, Ra and all that other stuff, the big eye. But what do I know about him? Well, what should you know about him? Well, I think he was involved in the assault weapons ban and stuff, because the last thing we want is a populace that not only can't protect themselves, but more importantly are easy to control. The other thing that we found out about the gentleman is he was big pushing NAFTA. Yeah, remember that thing NAFTA a while ago, the North American Free Trade Agreement and all that? And how much has that helped you? Has it helped all those auto workers? Has it helped the people in the textiles? Has it helped everybody you know? Does everybody, when you go to work, they say, gee, God bless those guys for passing NAFTA. Gee, I'm glad they gave money to foreigners and stuff. So anyway, a little bit of news. So we got a new guy, we're going to have a chief of staff guy. And what else has been happening in the news? Well, it's been now a week or two since they said they needed a bailout, rescue plan. Remember, we changed the words like George Orwell would do. And then Dan came up and said the ripoff. And what have we learned in that week, 2 week period? We've learned that they don't want to tell you where they're, putting those trillions of dollars. Yet we've also learned, thank you, the New York Times, that people like Goldman Sachs, they're doing what? They're giving each other bonuses? How interesting. B of A giving each other bonuses, and you're paying for them? Yeah. And last week's show, I brought forth the word that I wanted you to, practice saying to your children, that is hyperinflation, because of all this money printing. And it's rather interesting. I'm going a little fast, and I'll slow down. It's rather interesting that, or at least I'd like you viewers to consider. Yeah, remember the Federal Reserve show I did? Okay, do you remember anything about the Federal Reserve? Were they a public bank, or were they a private bank? Were they a banking cartel like OPEC is a oil-producing cartel? What's been happening with this bailout money? Well, we see that the big rich banks have been getting your money, so we took from the poor, or at least the not so affluent and wealthy, and we gave it to the really rich. And what are they doing? They're buying up banks. And manipulating markets, and then what, buying control of companies while the price is real low? Rather interesting how they do this. Would you be surprised if this wasn't the first time in history that something like this was done? Would that surprise you at all? So anyway, I got a little clip for you, and Patrick, can we play that clip? And this is Alan Greenspan telling you how much control you have over the central bank, that private central bank, that creates the money from nothing.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. And I've had very good relationships with presidents.
you found out that this private banking cartel, at least the ex-chairman told you that, we pretty much do what we want. And we don't have to listen to anyone. And what's rather interesting is I know you're all going to go back and look at history and say, well, in 1913, when they created that Federal Reserve system, they put a clause in there, and if you go down, I want to say it's like the 8th item, maybe item E or G or something. And if you look at it, it says, this bank doesn't have to pay any taxes. No federal taxes, no state taxes, no local taxes. So here's a tax-free organization that creates money from nothing. And remember, go back a week or two with the show, and I would have told you that they created $930 billion in 1 week. They didn't tell you who they gave it to or what they spent it on, but they told you, yeah, we created that. And that's interesting that they did that, because a while ago they stopped telling you how much money was out there, what the aggregate money supply was, which used to be known as the M3. So what are you realizing? Or at least hopefully, what questions would you ask? You might ask, well, how much money have they created? And in the case of this bailout rescue ripoff plan, who's getting that money that your children are going to have to pay taxes on, that you are going to have to pay taxes? And I don't know if you've paid attention to the news, but whether you live in a big community like New York or Los Angeles or Boston, or you live in a small community like Sharon, that I guess your taxes are going to have to go up, because the cost of things are going up. Remember I mentioned the words hyperinflation? Yes, because as the dollar loses its value, okay, things cost more, which basically means we're going to put more burden upon you and your relatives and your future relatives that you don't even know yet. And I've got to ask you, did you listen to Alan Greenspan? Do you understand what he just said? He just said, hey, we're a private organization. I'm telling you, they create money from nothing. There is no reserve. And they don't care what anybody in the government says. Now, a lot of you people, you've probably seen this. We've seen this a lot. We saw it a lot after 9/11 because we were pushing the whole patriotic thing, right? Because we were attacked, and we knew that if we go together, we'll have unity and strength. At the same time, though, they stopped showing you this, the Constitution of the United States of America. Well, anywhere in here, does it say anything about allowing a private bank to create our currency from nothing? Let alone to tax you for all that money created? Let alone, where's the control? Remember, this document created an agreement between the people and the government where the government would be open, not secretive, and where we could hold the government accountable. Not, we're not going to tell you because we don't care. But if you listen to Alan, what did Alan just tell you? Alan told you that we'll do what we please, and no branch or no level, executive, judicial, or legislative part of our government can have any control or say over what we do. So you, meanwhile, you out there, are you becoming slaves slowly? Is your currency losing value? Do you remember what houses used to cost? Should we go back in time for the old viewers? And at what point will you stop wanting to be slaves? Will you understand that this is not the first time in history? So with that, we're going to segue, and I'm going to segue to a piece. I read an extremely good book. I highly recommend you find it. It's called The Rise of the Fourth Reich, by a gentleman by the name of Jim Marrs. I learned about it because I listened to a radio program where he was being interviewed. And I thought the interview was so good that I actually will offer to you, if you contact me, I will get you a copy of it. I think it's extremely important that we have an understanding of the history we haven't been taught. And why I say that is many people, and especially Sharon viewers, having relatives who suffered through the Holocaust, understand that we may have beaten Germany during the Second World War. But did we defeat the Nazis, is the question I pose to you. And when I say that, I know it sounds weird. It's like, wow, I thought we beat the Nazis. I thought the Nazis were beaten. What if the Nazis lived on past that? What if they got a lot of their money and their secrets and the loot from Europe out in 43? You thought you beat them in 44 and 45, What if they kind of relocated? What if they relocated and you can find out that, remember that Evita, the Perones down in Argentina? Don't cry for me, Argentina. Okay, well, what do we know about that? Well, gee, there were a lot of Germans moving down there. Remember Mengele? That's right. Bormann, mean anything to you? And once again, if all this money and this power and this loot from the war, and also, what about if all, a lot of the science made it out? Because they were leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else in science. So I'm getting a little windy, going fast, but the question I'm going to put to you, and I'm going to recommend that you do some research. This is now, by the way, available at the Sharon Public Library. This is The Rise of the Fourth Reich. I highly recommend you Sharon viewers who love your families, you find this, you read it, you get a copy, you give a copy to someone else. Because what you'll learn is, gee, these people, really interesting histories and how the same names start showing up. Remember the Dulles brothers? I know you say Dulles. Isn't that an airport around Washington? You say Dulles. Wasn't he one of the first guys running the CIA? And you say, Dulles brothers, weren't they both attorneys for Sabin? The attorneys for the bank. Isn't Sabin Bank the one that kept Hitler's account? Hey, where'd you put your account, Mr. Herr Hitler? Oh, I kept it in Sabin Bank, huh? Weren't these guys also like Prescott Bush? Remember that name? We had a previous show, and I mentioned that Prescott Bush had been involved with, Brown Brothers Harriman and Union Bank. That was the bank that Thyssen used. Thyssen was the big German industrialist who may have used some of your relatives as slave labor. Okay? These are the people that wrote the book saying, well, gee, I created Hitler, I funded Hitler. And then you find out that, wow, a lot of the eugenics stuff, a lot of the banking, where did Hitler get his money, where did he get his ideas? And they fall back to groups that were here. And, it's a shame when you find out. I mean, think about our Vietnam veterans who found out that while Lyndon Johnson had us fighting the Vietnamese, that, in Russia, they were building trucks, at the Ford plant, from Lyndon Johnson money, and Ford, so that they could build trucks. So those trucks would be used to bring North Vietnamese into the battle zone, to fight our own American boys. And you ask yourself, why would Ford be helping, because these people are globalists. It's like IBM and the Holocaust. That's right, there's something for the viewers to look at. IBM and the Holocaust. Type those words into your Google, and you may find out that all during the war, those numbers on the arm, they related to an IBM computing machine number. Why is that? Who was selling IBM punch cards throughout the entire war? Who was making money here in America while we were supposedly fighting? Then you might ask, well, why would we have wars? If we were helping the other side, why bother shooting them? And then I might ask you, would globalist bankers make money during wars? Do you make money during wars? Who makes money during wars? But back to the Nazi thing, and I say the Nazi thing, we may have defeated Germany, but it's rather interesting when you look at, here's a word to type in. Type in Operation Paperclip. Yeah, that's kind of a thing to type in. Paperclips, they hold paper together. Well, you may find in Operation Paperclip that one of the guys in the Warren Commission, of all things, not McSorley, McForley or whatever, was... He's on the Warren Commission, and that's the guy who was looking into Kennedy assassination. But interestingly enough about this gentleman, he was in charge of Germany and the rebuilding of Germany. Rather interesting, huh? So here's a guy in charge of the rebuilding of Germany in 1947, and what does he do? He helps change all the papers, where it used to say, is an ardent Nazi, and then change it to, he is not an ardent Nazi. So that what? So they could emigrate 20,000, almost 100,000 people from the Nazi Party into the United States. Now you're probably familiar, you say, well, gee, remember the space race? Werner von Braun, right? Remember Werner von Braun? Started out, we're running NASA, we got the space race, we're going to get going and all this stuff. Well, it's interesting when you find out that the individuals there and a lot of the scientists, where'd they come from? They came from Germany. And what parties? Now you say, well, they just belonged to the Nazi Party because they wanted to. But then you find out even before the Nazis were in power, the groups of people and the things they were doing previously. And you say to yourself, why do these names keep coming up? So anyway, the Dulles brothers, okay? Yeah, and then this guy McSorley, and then you find out that, well, wasn't it Dulles and wasn't it this guy McForley or whatever who was on the Warren Commission saying that we've got to seal the records for the assassination of our president? Rather weird, huh? That these names show up again, that they keep showing up. And anyway, when we don't learn from history, they say that you're bound to make the same mistakes. Well, what you saw in the 30s in Germany was what they call, National Socialism. Nationalism, let's start there. Have you seen a lot of patriotic nationalism stuff, nationalism? I believe it was Washington who said that, be aware of the guy who comes across, I'm the big patriot. I'm not here to be a big patriot, but I'm here to at least have you ask questions. When you find out that the Bush family has been involved with Nazis, Prescott Bush, type in the word, Prescott Bush and Nazis, to find out that his assets were frozen. That there was a plan to overthrow, in our case, FDR back in the 30s, headed up by who? These industrialists. Because, you know, kind of like gun runners, they don't care who's shooting who. And as far as globalist industrialists, hey, they don't care. Go take me to the place with slave labor, okay? But now when you tie them in with the bankers, and these globalist bankers, who, like Alexander the Great, like Hitler, like Mao, like Stalin, should I go through the names of all these people that wanted to control everything? Boy, to find out that they're still alive, that there's societies and there's groups of people that have been doing this, planning it and writing it, and putting it out in front of you, like the Council on Foreign Relations, like David Rockefeller, who says in his own book, at like page 408, that yes, I'm proud that I've worked at ruining the sovereignty of the United States, and he wants a one-world government. Yeah, that's David Rockefeller, that big Chase Manhattan bank guy, huh? Remember Rockefeller? So here I am in Sharon. I'm just in a little town, and you're just a little town viewer. Maybe you're a web viewer. And I'm asking you, ask questions. Start waking up that things aren't right. We just got to listen to this, once again, the private banker, the ex-chairman of the Federal Reserve, tell you that I don't care what the government says or wants because it's not part of the government. And meanwhile, what are they doing? They're looting you. They're stealing from you constantly, not only through the means of inflation, where they devalue the currency and steal the value from you and buy real tangible assets, okay? Well, you get what? You get debt, okay? But they also tell you now, we're going to take your money and do whatever we want to do with it and not tell you, while they're enslaving you financially, while they're putting toxins in your water. Another interesting thing happened in 47. You should find out, read the book or whatever, you'll find out that the guy who the United States government sent over to rebuild the German chemical industry was working with I.G. Farman. This is one of your first, the early pharmaceuticals from the 1800s and stuff, but I.G. Farman's a huge chemical conglomerate from Germany. You probably remember GAF, right? All that stuff. Remember GAF? Don't forget them. But they said, hey, and what did they say? They found out from their chemists that they actually were putting fluoride in the water of the people that they wanted to make docile. And he reported this back. And it's in writing. And yet you viewers in Sharon, and you viewers out there on the web, when someone tells you we're putting it in for your teeth, find out the first person to put a toxin in your water. Okay? And you think everything's fine. And I'm sure all the people that went to dental school were told it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when Harvard finds out it causes cancer, you still allow it to be put in your food. Okay? When the Forsyth Institute finds out that it affects your brain, you still allow it to be put in your water. Not your food, I apologize. But when you find out that, what's the number one ingredient of Prozac? We're mass medicating the populace without even doing any blood work or finding out what they have or need. And for you dentists out there, I'd love for you to come out and tell me where the first application of fluoride was and how they worried about the people's teeth in Dachau and Auschwitz. You're the ones who are going to make the change. You're the ones who are going to make the difference. You're either going to allow this to continue on, or you're going to stop it and maybe start asking questions. This may seem like a lot, and I'm glad you tuned in. You're catching a lot. Okay, what else we have for you? Things to learn. Once again, when you find out that before the end of the war, these Nazi leaders behind the scenes, like I say, Bormann, okay, the number 2 guy is, oh, he's the number 2 guy. Hitler's the bad guy. If you got him in the bunker, yeah. People. They saw this coming. When I say saw this coming, as soon as what? Stalingrad, Leningrad, let's think about as soon as D-Day, knowing that it was going to come to an end, what did they do? They moved their money out. There was a thing called, Eagle Flight, where they actually created and started like 700 companies around the globe with the money and the loot that they stole. Okay? And so you find out that the attorneys for the Sabin Bank, that's right, the Dulles brothers, okay, what are they doing? This is the bank that handles Hitler's own account. They're turning into your new leaders of the CIA, and then all your CIA directors are what? Members of Skull and Bones? That's right. Wasn't Kerry and, who's that other guy? Bush, and Bush's father and Bush's grandfather. Weren't they all Yale graduates, members of Skull and Bones? Now, what is their symbol? It's, I believe, a skull with 2 crossbones, right? And the number 322. What does all that mean? Why do they go through this ritual thing? Why do they call the place they get together the crypt? Why do you sleep at the switch when you know that the people that killed your relatives or whatever are out there and getting in power? We have to do something because we can't sit back and allow criminals, and you've seen the criminal things, you've seen where they pass laws that say they can torture. Hey, you can't burn babies on the White House lawn. Even if they pass a law that says you can, it's still illegal. okay, and saying you can torture people, okay, because we think we're going to get information from them. Torture's still illegal and it's still wrong. But you've seen the, the previous, executive branch pass all these laws, and now they're being handed over to this new guy who you think is different because he has change. He's got that word change. You've got to wake up to the fact that, maybe he isn't different. Maybe if he's backed by the same bankers, the same Goldman Sachs group, gee, let's look at who gave him the most money. And who's benefiting from this, once again, bailout, rescue plan, ripoff? Gee, it's all these Goldman Sachs guys, huh? And they're giving each other bonuses in the billions and the tens of billions of dollars. And I'm telling you, there's criminals in your government. You have to wake up. You have to start showing this to people, or at least doing your own research. Waking up to the fact that, hey, didn't they lie to their people? Didn't they start unjust wars? Didn't they, what was it, Gleiwitz? Gleiwitz was where the radio station was, and they said, well, these people from Poland, they came and attacked a radio station in Germany, in Gleiwitz, Germany. So we must go attack the Polish people. And Hitler didn't do that with the German army. He did it with the reserves. So you got to ask yourself, hey, does that sound familiar? We've got this occupation going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's not the army so much as it's the reserves. And meanwhile, they're putting army on your streets. Doesn't that, come on, wake up. Army on your streets? Find out, type in the words Northcom. Find out, gee, we're bringing the army and we're putting them on the streets to help who, to help what? Meanwhile, they're building a police state around them so that they can be safe as they do what? As these central bankers who don't listen to you and are not part of our government bring you down to poverty. People, it's time to start thinking about food. Christmases are going to change around here, where we buy presents, and sometimes presents people don't want or need, and pretty soon, just to be given food is going to be a gift that people go, thank you for. Thank you for the food. Thank you. We have to start waking up. This sounds like shock stuff. I hope it sounds like shock stuff. I hope you typed those words into Google. Once again, try those words again. Let's write Prescott Bush, Nazi. Ooh, that's a thing to type into Google. What else are we going to type into Google? Operation Paperclip. Hey, this is declassified. Okay, how about the Dulles brothers? Remember? CIA, Dulles. Oh, Dulles brothers and bank. Oh, Dulles brothers lawyers for the bankers who do Hitler's account. Come on, people, okay? Brown Brothers Harriman, Union Bank. Hey, I've got something for you. We're going to end on a high note. What I've got for you, and what I want you to please take the time and listen to, is John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He's speaking to the Association of American Newspapers, okay? So here's your president, he was president at the time, giving a speech. And I've got to ask you, please listen. Please have your friends watch the show again. Bring your friends into the room and have them listen, at least to the end of the show. Listen to what John Fitzgerald Kennedy was saying to the American newspapers. This was a big, powerful media at the time, right? This is well before internet. Radio's still big, TV's big and all that. But please give Mr. Kennedy an opportunity and listen to what he was saying. And ask yourself, do you think things changed? Remember, he was the president who created a currency that competed against the Federal Reserve note. He authorized the printing of United States notes. Why would that upset a banker who, in this case, has a private bank, who has sole control of the issuance of our currency and can print any money they want and buy anything they want and tell you, by the way, hey, to hell with you, I'm doing what we want? You heard Alan Greenspan. If you think I'm lying. So what I have for you here is a little piece by John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Check it out. Have your friends and family watch the show, watch the specific piece, listen to Kennedy, and then maybe send me some info. Like I say, I've got a great interview. If you want to get a copy of it, get in touch with me. You know where I'm at. I'm here in Sharon Cable, the best cable on the planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter. And I've had very good relationships with presidents.